The Spanish Conquest of the Aztec Empire, the compromise and conflict of wiping out the Aztec civilization. During the 1500s, there is many new art being produced. For example, Leonardo da Vinci had just painted the Mona Lisa. Michelangelo just sculpted the David sculpture, and also in the 1500s there is many expeditions going on. Persia of the Aztec Empire. P is for political hierarchies, meaning leadership. The leader of the Aztec Empire was Montezuma II. The emperor was chosen by the leading men of the realm, and their choice was restricted to members of a royal family. In order to be the next emperor, you had to be an adult, a war chief, and a religious leader. People worked as farmers, traders, craftsmen people, and healers, but the healers were mostly women. They produced crops, and their most popular crops were carrots and sweet potatoes. They also produced clothing and weapons. The Aztec believed in their own tribal god, Huitzilopochtli, which was the sun god and the war god. They also believed in Tlaloc god, which was also the god of rain. They practiced human sacrifice, where the priests would wear the skin of their victims. This was performed on top of temples. They also had monthly ceremonies where they would ask for rain or celebrate its arrival. They would do this with their harvest as well. Women had the role of being household moms, meaning they would cook, weave, help out in the fields, and raise their children. They also had the role of being healers. Men, on the other hand, were sent off to work to provide for their family. They were also the warriors. At this time, men were valued way more than women. Some important traditions they did were celebrating their birthdays and a ceremony called the Volador, which was used to celebrate the new year. The Aztecs carved stone statues. They also made jewelry to wear on their ears, nose, and lips. An important Aztec craft was featherworking. They used feathers on their headpieces, which were only for nobles. The Aztec Empire spread over 80,000 square miles of central and southern present-day Mexico. At the time of the last emperor, Montezuma II, he ruled over 5 to 6 million people. The capital, Tenochtitlan, was built on islands, or also known as chinapas, on Lake Texcoco. The Compromise. In 1519, soldiers from Spain, led by Hernán Cortés, arrived in the Aztec lands. The Aztecs always believed that someday one of their gods would return from the east to rule over them, and they sometimes pictured this god as a man with pale skin and a beard. So because of this, they believed the Spanish soldiers were representatives of this god. Montezuma, believing that the Spanish were representatives of the god, he welcomed Cortés and his men into the palace of Tenochtitlan. Montezuma later started questioning himself whether the Spanish were actual gods or just ordinary men. Though he still kept sending them gifts, he made his sorcerers cast spells on them. Then one day the Spaniards started to march onto the capital, but Montezuma ordered them to stop and then offered to pay them an annual tribute. The conflict. Montezuma then discovered that the Spaniards were not godlike, so they held him captive. Although he was held captive, he was still able to rule, but his people had lost faith in him. So when he finally got to talk to them, his listeners were angry and threw stones and arrows, causing him to die a few days later. The Aztec people went rebel and started a battle with the Spaniards and almost killed them all. They barely got out of there alive, but the Spaniards were not going to give up. The Spaniards returned with reinforcements, starting a war and ending the Aztec civilization in 1521.